This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today we will continue our awesome book study on the classic out of print tome by W.E. Butler, The Magician, His Training, and Work. And in my opinion, this is one of the most densely packed texts teaching magic, full of gems, full of useful and valuable gems. Not simply someone trying to sound deep, intellectual, or spooky, but by a learned initiate, and maybe from the position that we are in, a master of the magical art. This is one of the best texts that I've read, not only for beginners, but also those who are very experienced with their magic. So I hope that you guys are ready to learn, ready to organize your inner framework so that we can put this information to good use. I made it. On a more personal note, I know last week I mentioned that I had a performance, and if I still had the energy and still had my voice intact, we'd continue doing the book study. Well, it just so happens that a little bit late, but we are here and we are ready to dig in. For those of you who are interested or curious, the show went amazing. I'm telling you, I've forgotten what a rush it was to perform live, to be on stage. And we had some amazing support, I'd have to say. A lot of people turned up from the past, right? There's a lot of people who remembered our music. I was surprised, there were people singing along to the lyrics, and that's a feeling that you just can't get anywhere else. So I'm kind of riding on a natural high after that performance. It was great. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of the band. And I'm just grateful that I'm even able to do something like that, 20 years ago as a kid, that was my dream. I wanted to be this rock star. I wanted to get on stage and scream and play my music, And I got to have that experience. It was awesome. And I thought I was done completely. But manifestation is a beautiful thing, especially when it's a collective manifestation. But yeah, had an awesome time, and I'm so grateful to be able to do that. Yes, y'all. Okay, so let's continue. Peace and greetings to everyone who is here. Peace to Sunshine Chick. Nice to see you. Great to see you. Sunshine Chick says, "Hey Trav, I think we are on part 2. You are exactly right. We have just entered part 2. And the reason that I named this one part 3 is just going by an outside viewer's perspective, just keeping track of the actual live streams. So this will be the 3rd live stream. That's why I called it that. So there's probably going to be a part 7, right? But in this case, we are just now entering part 2. We previously went through why the book was written, the basis of magic, and the tree of life. Now we're going to enter into some more specifics dealing with the astral light, the invisible body, visualization, and audition. So let's get to it. Richard Tracy, peace, brother. Framestar Films, peace, brother. Stuff Dog 69, peace, brother. LD, peace. Gilly Pseudo 47, peace. Alicia M, peace and greetings. Ashley B, greetings. Did you ever finish that painting? Aldin, peace. Vincent Fiasco, welcome back. Serious Suit 888, peace, brother. All right, so let's dive into this thing, shall we? Page 47, that's where we're headed. Jet Jaguar, welcome. Jet Jaguar. Serious Suit 888 says, means of despair. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My baby mama live streamed it, so I'll have to get the recording from her a little bit later. I'll post it on my page, just because, you know, I'm excited about it. It was good fun. Maybe some of you guys will enjoy it too. Society ejects. Peace, brother. Peace. Glad to have you. All right, coffee is brewed, power outlet is plugged in, and now we are plugged in. How's the music? Is it too loud? Let me know. I'll turn it down just a notch. Life is good, and I hope that whatever you guys are doing with your energy, with your time, I hope that it's something that you can be proud of. You know, I hope it's something that you can be proud of right now, and also in the future when you look back on what you've invested your time in, you can be proud of this. So life is complicated, but also simple. But you should be doing what you want to do and what makes you feel good. It's too short to be doing anything otherwise. All right, let's get it. Part 2, the training of the magician. All right, let's do it. Chapter 4, preliminary notes. In this section of the book, it is intended that the student should be given some idea of the training which he must undergo if he would be a practical magician. It will be seen as the instruction unfolds that it is no light task. Indeed, to attain the higher stages of magical power demands an application, an intensity of effort, and a perseverance greater than those required for any other pursuit in life. For indeed, this is a magnum opus, a great work, nothing else, in fact, than the disintegration and reintegration of the student's own personality. And remember, he talked about that in the last book, right? Magic, its ritual, power, and purpose. The disintegration and the reintegration of the personality. Anna Molly. Peace. Peace. My favorite ginger. Hakeem Lamidi, greetings, greetings. Since our personality has been built up in this earthly life by our general appreciation of the principles of pleasure and pain, it will be seen that it presents a rather untidy appearance. Our house of life has been built of materials selected haphazardly from the workshop of the architect. And because we ourselves did the selecting, we tend to overrate the results of our selection. The student has to gain the power to rid his personality of those things which are not true to plan, and to substitute those which are. This calls for what has been termed the first virtue of the path, discrimination. We've heard this before, right? Especially studying the yoga texts. Discrimination, that's the first thing that must be developed on your path to practical magic. Discrimination. I can't imagine going any level further without discrimination. So I'll read that again. The student has to gain the power to rid his personality of those things which are not true to plan. Is it useful? Is it appropriate? And to substitute those which are. This calls for what has been termed the first virtue of the path, discrimination. It is evident, of course, that he needs guidance in the early stages in order to develop this quality of discrimination. And the best guidance, apart from personal supervision by his teacher, is to read and meditate upon some one of the many manuals of mystical devotion and thought. Some such are spiritual exercises, God calling, the practice of the presence of God, interior castles. I heard that was a good one, interior castles. Christ in you, light on the path, the voice of silence, the ascent of Mount Carmel, the Gospel of St. John, the cloud of unknowing, a serious call, and many more. These are all texts that you can read that the author suggests that you meditate upon. The reading of these books and meditation thereon will serve to key the student to a certain level of spiritual thought, and he will find that they will give him a touchstone which will help him to see those things in himself which are out of place in the true plan of his personality, and also see with what other materials he may correctly replace them. In attempting such alterations to the personality, the student must remember that it is necessary to proceed with caution. It may be that some particular thing in the personality is a keystone which supports the weight of much of the personal self. To attempt to remove this before the correct substitute has been lifted into position is to risk the ruin of one's house of life. As we have expressed it in the motto on the title page of this book, through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established. Wisdom and understanding are two of the three topmost sephirah of the Kabbalistic tree of life. Let us for a moment consider what happens when we do certain things. We are moved to action by two types of stimuli. The first is the stimulus we gain from our own self-initiated will and desire. We desire certain things to happen, and we determine that they shall happen. The sequence is desire, will, act, working from within. The second type of stimulus comes from persons or conditions outside ourselves. The sequence here is stimulus, thought, feeling, and the resultant action. This sequence we may term reaction. All right, so he's breaking down reaction, and he's breaking down basically willpower, right? So what he's saying here is there's two types of influences or stimulus that causes us to do whatever. The first comes from within, right? You desire something, then you will it into being, and then you act on that will. That's the first. The second comes from outside. So you get some kind of stimulus, whether it's a sound, a sight, a smell, a taste, a touch, whatever. And that stimulus causes a thought, and that thought leads to a feeling. This is how everybody operates, no exception. So stimulus, thought, feeling, and then reaction. A few live streams ago, I talked about how when it comes to energy, right? Either you are moved by your surroundings or you move your surroundings. It's one of the two. A lot of people talk about, oh, well, I'm going to match the energy. You can do that, but understand that you are still in a reactive state. And it becomes difficult to gain mastery on this magical path if you are continually in a reactive state. Because think about it, if you're spending all of your time reacting to the world, you're not really putting forth your will at all. I mean, sure, a little bit of your will and how you choose to react, but there's got to be a hefty, healthy dose of you using your own desire to cause change in the world. Otherwise, you're still in reactive mode. You know? That's what the news is all about, right? Telling you that the president did something, or somebody's at war, or a giant meteor asteroid the size of 3 times the size of the Himalayan mountains or Mount Everest is headed towards Earth. You know, that would have caused fear in me in the past, and it's causing fear in a lot of people, but Nowadays, like, number one, if it happens, it happens. It's supposed to happen. Number two, if I really didn't want it to happen, I know what to do to stop that. But even still, that's reacting. A proactive will, don't even pay attention to any of that nonsense. I call it nonsense because it's always on repeat. That's the program of the Matrix, to keep your attention on things that are external to you so that you can continually be reacting. That's all the Matrix is. Kevros SS God, peace, brethren, peace. Vincent Fiasco says that could lead to a feedback loop of sorts, though. Haha. But he's right, of course. Absolutely. Okay, let's continue. So, the first sequence, desire, will, act. The second sequence, stimulus, thought, feeling, and the resultant action. This sequence we may term reaction. Reaction may be voluntary or involuntary. Usually it is involuntary, and our house of life is enriched by a stone selected for us by someone or something, not ourselves. And when we talk about this, I want you to really think about so-called free will, right? We talk about free will, where I can do what I want. Where does the want come from, right? Is it free will if you're continually reacting to the outside world? That's my question. In the unregenerate man, such instinctive reactions is the usual order of things, and by a wise use of this, it is possible to lead the average man into all kinds of queer paths. It will be evident that the more passionate and involuntary of the reaction may be, the easier it becomes to guide the person concerned into good or evil ways. The classic instance of the Irishman who got all his pigs to market in record time by pulling them in the opposite direction is a very good illustration of this tendency of the human mind. And the tendency is used by the occult student in his training. So look, I'll tell you this also. It's not about fighting anything, right? It's not about going to war with anything. You come to understand your mind. You come to understand yourself. You come to understand your patterns, and then you work with them. If you're stubborn, use that stubbornness to lead yourself to your goal. Don't fight it. Utilize it. Harness it. Work with the tools that are on your table, right? The classic instance of the Irishman who got all his pigs to market in record time. How? By pulling them in the opposite direction, right? It's a very good illustration of this tendency of the human mind. And the tendency is used by the occult student in his training. Wisdom, right there. When we come to the building of the magical personality, it will be seen how this is affected, but it is necessary to mention it here. In some Eastern systems of training, great stress is laid upon ekagrata, or one-pointedness of mind. Y'all remember this book? If you don't, I highly suggest you have it in your library, right? Talking about one-pointedness of mind. This is the book right here. This is the Bible for that right here. But y'all already know that. We've been on that for a couple of years now, right? Dharana means one-pointedness. Hence that red dot. I remember in the beginning we all thought that his name was Dharana Darshan, right? But no, Dharana is one-pointed focus, concentration, and Darshan is the vision that comes with that one-pointedness. Penetrating the dimensions with your mind. It's a very real thing. See, we take psychedelics and stuff like that now to get visions, but before we had to do that, people were disciplined enough to tap in simply by being still and focusing the awareness. Jermaine M, peace. It you, peace. What a beautiful evening, man. What a beautiful evening. In some Eastern systems of training, great stress is laid upon ekagrata, or one-pointedness of mind, and the yoga aphorisms of Patanjali, that's another great one, right? The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I need to crack that one open again. The Yoga aphorisms of Patanjali, or Patanjali, describe yoga as the conscious modification of the thinking principle. What's yoga? The conscious modification of the thinking principle. The student must learn how to inhibit the irrational reaction which his personal self offers to stimuli from other people or other events, and be himself the conscious originator and modifier of whatever changes of consciousness he decides to bring about. Can I read that again, because it was extremely important? Check this out. What must the student do? The student must learn how to inhibit, right? You must learn how to stop. You must learn how to close off. You must learn how to prevent, right? The student must learn how to inhibit what? The irrational reaction, the emotional, the irrational reaction, which his personal self offers to stimuli from other people or other events. So look, the gossip, the bad news, the fear, the paranoia, all that negative stuff, right? You must learn how to inhibit, not the stimulus. You can't inhibit the stimulus, but what you can inhibit is the irrational reaction. And guess what? What's the opposite of logic? It's emotion, irrational reaction, right? How to inhibit that, which his personal self offers to the stimuli from other people or other events, and be himself, right? Instead of that, you be yourself the conscious originator and modifier of whatever changes of consciousness he decides to bring about. So we have come to the definition of magic given in the writer's first book, which is Magic, Its Ritual Power and Purpose. Magic is the art of affecting changes in consciousness at will. Y'all with me so far? You following? You following? Is anybody not up to speed so far? And what that literally means is that no matter what happens, right? No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, no matter what you feel, you learn to inhibit the irrational reaction. You learn to stop that and instead maintain your frame and become the conscious originator and modifier of whatever changes of consciousness you decide to bring about. So look, I can recall for myself, and I'm using a personal example because I know a lot of people feel this way too. How many of you have had something like where a memory from God knows how long ago comes up, and then you suddenly feel embarrassed, like, oh, I can't believe I said that, or I shouldn't have done that, or oh, that was stupid of me. You ever have some memory just come back out of nowhere and make you feel ashamed or embarrassed, like, damn, I shouldn't have done that? Even though you probably don't even speak to those people anymore, even though it's been decades, it still comes back up and you feel like, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that, right? That's one example of, say, something that pops up. And the irrational reaction is feeling that embarrassment or that shame or that regret or whatever. So what do you do? What do you do? So whenever that thought comes, because guess what? It still happens to me. Those thoughts still come. Like, remember when you did such and such back in 1998 or some stupid long time ago? When that thought comes, you inhibit the irrational reaction, because guess what? It's natural that those thoughts come. However, you can stop the feeling of shame or embarrassment or regret, and instead, guess what? Offer a different stimuli, one that you want to feel. So what I do whenever those thoughts come up, I say, yeah, I remember when I did that back in 3rd grade. I remember when I did that back in 2003. Yeah, I remember that. And you know what? At the time, that was the best that I could provide. That was the best I could offer back then. I'm a different person now. I've grown, I've learned. I can't feel guilty because honestly, that wasn't even me back then. That wasn't even me. Who I am today was not that same person. What I'm saying is, instead of feeling that shame and that regret, I choose to use it to feel confidence and to feel reassurance and to integrate that, right? To integrate that. Yeah, I said that, I did that, and that was the best I could offer at the time. And it helped to get me to where I am today. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. The electric rose, peace. Right, and that's just one example, y'all. I know each and every one of you listening here has some type of stimulus, whether it be your own subconscious. Well, I'm not even gonna say subconscious mind, because it's the ego that does that. It's the ego that does that. We all have things that pop up in our minds, and it tries to lead us towards an irrational reaction. But when I say maintain your frame, that's the same thing I'm talking about here. Instead of going down that rabbit hole of negativity, you can choose to stay focused on what it is that you actually want. What is useful? What is appropriate? Go that direction. Go that direction. And remember, it's never about fighting, and it's not about war. It's about integration. You don't fight those thoughts. You understand why it's happening, and you understand what to do next. It's natural to keep it pushing. You can't. I saw a great quote, right? It said, no matter how much you worry about the past, and no matter how anxious you are about the future, those two vibes don't even change anything. Your regret doesn't change the past, and your anxiety doesn't change the future. So those are useless emotions. You don't have to feel that. You don't. You dig? You dig. Vincent Fiasco says, integration of all parts of your being. It helps. Absolutely. Integration, not fighting. Society Eject says, yep, mine's is when I see people that I got in an argument back in the day. Sometimes that shit trying to play out, and I had to redirect it. Right. Taking control and not letting the irrational, aka emotional, reactions take over. So now we come to a point where the best and most detailed instructions lapse. There's a peculiar and personal interaction between the personalities of the magician and his apprentice. And it is in the atmosphere of that interaction that the best work can be done. This atmosphere cannot be given in a book, but the book may help the apprentice to train himself to the point where such a personal link with one of the craftsmen of the spirit becomes possible. Then by an eternal law, when the apprentice is ready, the teacher appears. But long before this, he will have met that teacher through the personalities who have successfully guided him along the path. And he put that in italics, right? So look, then by eternal law, when the apprentice is ready, the teacher appears. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. But long before this, he will have met that teacher through the personalities who have successively guided him along the path. For whenever he is ready for the next stage of his training, the necessary teacher for that stage comes to him. If this was more fully understood, there would be less self-bamboozlement. What a wonderful word. There would be less self-bamboozlement among occult students, less seeking after masters and initiates. The true masters and initiates exist, but they do not advertise. They do not advertise. Finally, the apprentice must remember that in the end, there's only one master for him, the indwelling being of light, whose persona or mask he is. That higher self, itself a facet of the eternal, one with all other facets, is the ultimate court of appeal, the true master, and indeed the true magician. The true magician. I was talking with my cousin last night about a lot of things. You know, he started the conversation asking me, like, how would I describe the fourth and fifth dimensional experience? And we got into a really good conversation about that. And eventually we got to talking about this here, the student and the teacher. And I said, for me and him, we're not going to meet anybody who's like on this stuff, who's going to teach us, right? Just based on where we live and the type of people who are here. We're not going to meet somebody who's going to teach us this information. And I'm pretty sure that you can say the same thing. It's highly improbable. And what we were talking about was you when it comes to when you reach that level of the oath of the abyss and you understand, like, truly that all of life is a conversation between you and God. That's it. So all the different people you meet, all the different experiences you have in life, all that is simply conversation between you and God. And looking at it that way, you start to understand that your teacher, your guru, becomes life itself. Right? So your experiences, you start to see that they're all connected. It's not like just random stuff happening. Like, it's all part of one long story. From, I wanted to say from when you wake up to go to sleep, but honestly, through your dreams to waking to sleep and more dreams, like, it's all one long connected story. Or I should say it's one now, right? The conversation. It's all one now. And we can say God, consciousness, whatever word you want to use. That uses people and uses your life experiences to teach you if you know how to be a student. So even though I know, like, some guru is not going to come down and teach me, what I do know is that the people that I interact with, you all, the people in my physical life, these are my teachers. They don't know it, but these are my teachers. And it doesn't matter if they don't know how to meditate and they've never read a book by Dion Fortune. That's not what I'm looking for, because you have to understand the spirit communicates through any channel that is open, right? So the knucklehead, the drug addict, the drunk, the person you think is just off the path, all of these people can become channels when the message needs to be delivered. Who's at that level? Who's at that level where they can understand that the message is coming through any channel necessary? Who's experienced that? I'm talking about the most asleep Christian you ever met. Somebody that you completely won't even expect. The message can come through. Stuff Dog 69 says it's like the agents in the Matrix. Beautiful example. Aladdin says it's all one beautiful work of art you're a part of. It's amazing. Right. Anna Molly says children, strangers, etc. Right. I think it's wonderful. What we were also talking about was like what we're really doing with a lot of these rituals and practices that we've been doing for the past couple of years is we're training our sensitivity. Like, between the study and the practice, right? Between the two sides of the art, where you're studying your practice, while you're doing them consistently, something magical should be happening. It's not just about collecting data, and it's not just about so-called practicing magic. What you're actually doing, and listen close, what you're actually doing is you're developing a sensitivity to vibration. That's what you are actually doing. And if you're properly studying and applying what you studied to your practice and taking the results back to your study, if you're circulating that prana like that, what starts to happen is you begin to develop a sensitivity to vibration, right? So we talk about telepathic incidents. We're able to read the thoughts or read the aura of other individuals. We're able to have premonition and predict things before they happen, or when you just get a feeling or a vibe. This is all the art of being sensitive to vibration, because all of life is vibration. Matter is simply animated by vibration. So through these practices and through these studies and these teachings, you should start becoming more and more sensitive to the subtle vibes, right? So you don't need to see something or to hear something to know whether or not that's the direction you need to go. It will start to become very subtle, very intuitive. That's what's supposed to be happening as you do this work. So it isn't merely about, oh, well, you didn't pronounce Yaldabaoth correctly, or, well, brother, actually it says this, and like, yeah, all that stuff's cool. But what you should be doing as an individual is tuning your inner receiver, right? So if they talk about a gigantic asteroid coming towards Earth that's 3 times the size of Mount Everest, you should have felt that before they even started broadcasting about it. Did anybody feel that? And my question is, first of all, you know these people never tell you the truth. It's more than an asteroid. That's just on the physical. What really is it, right? In the astral. And we're talking about pressure. I talked about pressure before on the last podcast. It's all about pressure. So with these new, and this is probably like the 3rd or 4th extrasolar entity that's entered our solar system that's never been here before. So just like the different stars and planets apply pressure to us, that's why we have astrology, right? It's the pressure of these moving bodies in the distance. Imagine when these new frequencies enter our solar system that have never been here before. That's a new kind of pressure. Like I said, you should be developing your sensitivity. Vincent Fiasco says that's how the Kabbalah works. It's creating a subtle language between you and the universe. Exactly. Society Eject says, no, me and my brother have been bumping heads. I just realized maybe last month that he is my teacher for patience. Beautiful, man. I'm telling you, we get so spiritual sometimes we forget that sometimes the people that we don't like are the guru. It was some gurus in India who would smack the student across the head with that stick, right? It wasn't all simply love and light. Boot camp. It's not all about what feels good. That's what we learned as babies, right? Milk for babies, meat for strong men and women. Okay. The astral light. Now we're getting to the good stuff, the spicy, entertaining good stuff. So if you're just here for the excitement, this is your chapter. The astral light, chapter 5. The next phase of existence beyond the physical world is usually known to the spiritualists as the spirit world. The theosophists term it the astral plane, and the Hindus speak of it as Kamaloka. We are using the old name current in the Western schools, the astral light, and we do this for a very definite reason. Both the spiritualistic and theosophical names give the idea of a place, and this is somewhat misleading. Yes, pay attention to that. Remember, I know it's hard to break that habit, but the astral plane is not a place. It's a state of vibration, just like the physical plane, or what we call Earth. What we call Earth is a certain state of vibration. You exist simultaneously on all these planes, right? However, this consciousness that we have, this awareness that we have, is like a radio. Imagine a radio, and you can tune the dial to get this station or that station, but one station at a time. Well, this awareness that we have, that we call ourselves, is the radio station of this particular frequency, this particular density, third dimension, Earth, whatever. Earth density comes with this radio station of what you call your mind, your ego. Now, there's more to you than just that. The same way that there's more stations floating around in the airwaves. What we call an ego, what we call our personality, what you call you, is just that slice of consciousness that's attached to the third dimension. When you get to the fourth and the fifth, it starts expanding to the point that it includes more than just this radio station. It includes the whole radio. Then it starts to include all the vibrations. More on that later. More on that later. Let's keep going. Both the spiritualistic and theosophical names give the idea of a place, and this is somewhat misleading. Although to a certain extent it is correct to speak of the next phase of existence as a place, yet this obscures its most salient point. The more important aspects of this astral light is its aspect as a state of consciousness. By using the term astral light, we avoid the rigid limitation of the idea of place. So once again, and this probably bears worth repeating a million times, the astral plane is not a place. Don't let these TikTokers lead you astray. The astral plane is what? A state of consciousness. Just like the physical plane is a state of consciousness. When the vibrations start to increase, you start to get past this level of dense matter. It's just a different channel on that radio station. The name astral comes from the Latin relating to the stars. This name was used by the old occultists, and it aptly describes the substance of the higher astral levels. There's another interesting point here. The old Anglo-Saxon word steron, which is based on the same root as the word astral, means to steer, and is itself the root of our present day word. So the astral is the steering or directing level, and this is very true. He said that the astral is the steering or the directing level. So what kind of image does that paint for you in your mind? Before, we would think of the astral plane as this place of dreams where you would, mold the world like Plato, which is true. But the root word to describe, when they were looking for a word to describe this in English, the root word comes from the word to steer, to direct, the same way that you would steer and direct your car to spin the block. Right? Aldin says, Butler breaking out the etymology, right? You got to appeal to all types of minds. We have referred to the substance of the astral levels. What is really meant by that term? Is the matter of the astral light real? Yes, but its reality is of another order. It is taught that there are two aspects to everything, that which a thing really is, and that which it appears to be. Since the appearances, or accidents as they are termed, are the manifestations of the realities, they have a reality of their own. But this reality is a dependent and not a primary one. Now, each level of existence has its own type of substance, and each grade of substance has its own appearance or accident. We distinguish here between the basic reality of the particular level and the appearances it presents to the consciousness of those dwelling on it. But there is another definite division which affects us more directly. Every level of substance manifests under the dual aspects of force and form. Remember that? There's a form for a thing, but as an occultist, as a magician, witch, whatever you want to call yourself, you know intrinsically that behind every form is a force that the form represents, right? So when you see this pin, it's not about horses with a horn on its head. This is a symbol that represents a force, right? And every magical symbol that you deal with, hell, when you really break it down, talking about the oath of the abyss, and your ritual doesn't begin when a full moon is out and you light your candle and put on your robe, the ritual began a long time ago, right? And it's not going to end anytime soon. So the ritual is every waking moment, which means that all the events that are happening in your life are forms that represent the forces at play. This is why we use symbology. This is why I continually say expand your library of correspondences so you can start to read the world the same way that you read a tarot card. Everything has meaning, and everything is a form of a force. In the great glyph of the Tree of Life, these two aspects are symbolized as the right and left hand pillars, right? We're talking about force and form here. Remember, Dion Fortune taught us about this. The left hand pillar represents form, with Bina, which is the coagulation of the forms, and then Gibera, which is the breaking of the forms, and then Had, which is the analysis of the forms. That's the left hand path, left pillar. And you got the right pillar, and we're talking about Hakma, which is explosive force. We're talking about Chesed, which is collective force, right? And then we're talking about Netzach, which is that force arranged in harmony and beauty. So we got force and form on both of those pillars, right? Vincent Fiasco says that's the LVX in reality, whereas the Nox, the NOx, is the void, the vibration plays in, or the womb of Nuit. Yes, sir. And Amali says art and nature are so rich in symbols, so are dreams. Absolutely. Stuff Dog says when you unlock this aspect of reality, it overlays your entire perspective. There is no going back. Facts. Facts. So yeah, in the great glyph of the Tree of Life, these two aspects, force and form, are symbolized as the right and left-hand pillars, and in the Masonic order as the pillars of King Solomon's temple, Jachin and Boaz. That's why you see the J and the B on the two pillars, right? Especially on the High Priestess tarot card. On the physical plane, we are accustomed to its type of matter manifesting mainly under the form aspect, right? That's the physical plane. On the physical plane, we are accustomed to its type of matter manifesting mainly under the form aspect. It is stable and fixed. In fact, it is difficult to make it obey any force brought to bear upon it, right? So when you're doing your magic and you're channeling energy and you're pushing it towards a specific form, like a person or a thing, just because you don't see an instant change doesn't mean it's not working. Understand that the material plane is extremely stubborn, right? If you remember our studies about the Vedic information, about the yoga information, you remember that tamas is dull, right? It's dull and it's gravity and it's dense matter and it does not want to move, right? So that's not a good indication. Something not changing physically is not a good indication that your magic isn't working. That's for people who don't have very much discipline or faith. So he says here, on the physical plane, we are accustomed to its type of matter, manifesting mainly under the form aspect. It is stable and fixed. In fact, it is difficult to make it obey any force brought to bear upon it. And I'll tell you what, even when it comes to working magic that deals with influencing people, you don't try to influence their physical body. What do? You aim for the mind or you aim for the emotions, right? Neither of those things are physical. So when you're doing magic towards another person, you really don't do it towards the body. You do it towards the mind and the heart because those things are more malleable than the actual physical body, right? You ever tried to lose 10, 20, 30 pounds? How long does that take? And how much consistent applied pressure does that take? Right? Take that versus how long it may take to change somebody's mind or somebody's heart. See, that doesn't depend on time. That depends on hitting it at the right angle. Because even the most stubborn person can change their mind if you hit them at the right angle. Let's keep going. Once molded into a form, it persists in that form. We are now referring to what we term solid matter. This, when we wish to build a house or make a dress, we have laboriously to piece together our material. We have to have our material made, and we have to employ the tools of all kinds of shape and build our house or make our dress. This is because that type of matter, which we term physical, manifests mainly under the form aspect. There are certain forms of dense matter which are also manifest to some extent under the force aspect. Such are radioactive elements, of which radium is the chief. But even here, though the radioactive elements emit force and themselves change in the process, such change is towards more stable and inert types of matter, the form aspect becoming more powerful than the force aspect. But the substance of the astral levels manifests chiefly under the force aspect of its nature. For this reason, the accidents or appearances of the astral are quite different from those that of our physical level. Since astral substance thus manifests, it does not take any form naturally. It may be pictured as an interpenetrating atmosphere of energy substance, reflecting like a mirror the forms impressed upon it, either from spiritual realms above it or from the etheric and physical realms below it. Thus, we have a natural point of division in the astral light, and these two divisions are known as the higher astral and the lower astral. We have therefore two distinct types of appearances, the one which is the natural expression of the astral substance, and the other which is the expression of the consciousness of all living beings, including those who are the true natives and fauna of the astral light. Those who are the true natives those who are sojourning there either temporarily or semi-permanently, but whose origin and true home is elsewhere. It may be said, but surely the descriptions given, though through psychics, portray a very material and definite state. This is true, but always these appearances are the creations of the created. They are formed by the power of thought, by the dwellers in the astral light. There are, it must be remarked, many kinds of dwellers in the astral light. Here we must digress slightly and consider the body or vehicle, which is our natural expression in the astral light. Is he talking about the astral body? Aldin says that's a great reframe. Material plane being stubborn, better than it being evil or against you. Right. You see, a lot of people have been conditioned to consider opposition as an evil thing, right? For instance, you got all these people that are afraid of the demiurge and blaming the archons for trouble. But I tell you what, you should be thankful that there are archons in place. What is their duty? Their duty is to be a gatekeeper. What that means is, when you're not ready for certain types of information or certain types of experiences, these gatekeepers prevent you from going too far. That's what it is. But then you have these people who take that opposition and consider it an evil thing, a bad thing. Oh, they're keeping us prisoner. They're keeping us this, that, and the third. Well, I'll tell you what, you wouldn't want to see what's on the other side of those archons, especially if you're behaving in that manner, especially if you're jumping to conclusions that there's these evil, scary monsters out there to hurt you. You're definitely not ready to see what's on the other side of that gate. And there's archons at every level. And the higher you go, the more difficult it is to detect them. Because you start to think that you've reached the pinnacle and the top. And you really don't see them until you're ready to move past them. It's a curious system that's set up here. The lower level archons are very easy, right? Very easy. Because a lot of fear is generated. And that fear is us sensing the vibration of what's on the other side of that gate. It's not that we're actually afraid of this thing. The fear is the subconscious mind saying to the ego, you're not ready for this. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. Vincent Fiasco says, I just said something to a friend. It may actually come from within, but the ego doesn't see it that way because it doesn't conform to its ideal. Exactly. Exactly. The ego has to be conditioned to come into harmony with the subconscious mind. All right. Ordinarily, we express ourselves through both thought and emotion, even though their relative proportions may vary according to the particular circumstances and temperament of our personality. Right? We ordinarily express ourselves through thought and emotion, even though the relative proportions, right, the balance between thought and emotion, even though the relative proportions may vary according to the particular circumstances and the temperament of your personality. So this persona or mask is built up by us through thought and emotion. According to our level of thought and emotion will be the particular grade of astral and mental substance which we are building into it. But only a small part of our habitual thinking is really conscious and deliberate. Only a small part of our habitual thinking is really conscious and deliberate. Like I said, consider free will as we go through this section. All our lives we are building up subconscious thought habits, and these are always affecting our conscious thinking, even as they are always building into our astral mental bodies, types of astral substance which are in tune with the general sum of our subconscious activity. It will be seen that attendance at church on Sunday is very definitely offset by our daily thought activity during the rest of the week. For this daily thought is always working towards the establishment of subconscious thought habits. So the type of astral body we possess is determined by the majority vote of our subconscious complexes. Let's run that back. So the type of astral body we possess is determined by the majority vote of our subconscious complexes. When we terminate our incarnation on Earth and the silver cord is loosened, then we pass into the astral realms, which correspond in their grade of astral matter with the matter which during our life days we have built into the ruach, or astral mental body. You get that? You get that? So he says, thus, as the scriptures say, every man goeth to his own place. Moreover, because of the law of sympathetic vibration, we find ourselves in the company of those who have also built into their astral bodies similar grades of astral matter. So look, the conscious mind is really just a regulator of subconscious influences, right? So depending on, like he says, if you take the general sum of the state of your subconscious mind, all those unsolved complexes you've got, all that shadow work that you haven't worked out, all those different things play an influence on your overall experience, right? And that overall experience, that overall subconscious influence, that is your astral body, right? So just like he said, you go to church on Sunday and play all holy, and then the other 6 days you might be operating differently. Well, which one of those states are going to have more influence on your overall being? So think about yourself right now. What are the overall subconscious influences on your life? Not just when you're reading these books or not just when you're being spiritual. What about when you're not being spiritual? What is the overall subconscious weather like inside of you? And whatever that is your astral body. That's the state of your astral body. And just like how the yoga texts talk about when you die, when you pass, your consciousness goes to a similar vibration that you were vibrating on while you were alive. That doesn't mean heaven or hell. It's not a dichotomy of two places. There's an infinite space. An infinite space. And the same emotions that you're tapping into right now, the same subconscious atmosphere that you're generating right now, you're tapping into a place right now. That's where you are. That's your state. So if you're somebody who's very positive, you're pulling from this positive sector of the astral plane. If you're somebody who's depressed, if you're somebody who's angry all the time, if you're somebody who's looking for a boogeyman and an enemy to fight, you're pulling from an astral place. And if you're stuck there when your body is finished, that's where your consciousness goes. Sunshine Chick says, so your thoughts and emotions on the physical plane is building that same substance on the astral plane. Exactly. MC Maestro, peace, brother. Vincent Fiasco says the complexes have a tendency to rule most people. They don't have the ability to reflect enough to see the truth, even if it bit them. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And not only do we see it, but remember, 9 times out of 10, we were there too. So don't forget when you were there. Remember when you were there, and then you'll have a better understanding of where these people are, because you were once there. Remember your own ignorant state. And judge these folks the same way you would judge yourself. I think somebody got offended by the demiurge talk. I love talking about the archons and the demiurge because that always roots out the people who are pretending to be learned in this information. They get riled up and offended. That's part of why I keep bringing that up. Let's keep going here. Even without the vampire music. I got everything else plugged in except where my music was coming from. So it will return shortly. Meanwhile, thus, as the scriptures say, every man goeth to his own place. Moreover, because of the law of sympathetic vibration, we find ourselves in the company of those who have also built into their astral bodies similar grades of astral matter, right? So it's not that you have to create your astral body, it's that it already exists. And it's like, again, like I said, the radio station. If you can imagine all the different human emotions, and there's probably only like 12 of them, you can say that each one of those human emotions are radio stations. And depending on which station that you're tuned into most frequently, that's where your astral body is. That's what your astral body is composed of. So if you see something and you don't like it, you know what to do to move yourself into that state. You got to think and feel differently, consistently. MC Maestro says the demiurgers aren't necessarily fake, just operating from the software of X versus Y. Yes, yes. And from my observation, it seems that that framework of us versus them, no matter how it's manifested, is leading to an obstacle of the self, because you can't believe that the all is all at the same time you believe that the devil's out to get you. These things all serve a function. If then our habitual thoughts and emotions have been mainly on the level of the good, the beautiful, and the true, then we find ourselves in most congenial company, and our thoughts, working in their habitual subconscious fashion, form the plastic astral substance around us into the forms which, to our earth developed minds, represent such goodness, beauty, and truth. So we find ourselves in a place of hills and mountains, of trees and rivers, a land of natural beauty, the summer land of the early spiritualists. It may be thought that even the grouped minds of many people thinking along such lines could not produce such stupendous appearances. The human mind is capable of much greater feats than at present appear possible to it. But we are not dealing with the human mind alone. We have said that the upper astral reflects the mental and spiritual realms beyond, where dwell those great intelligences who have gained that relative perfection, which is the goal of the earthly pilgrimage. In that realm dwell also the shining ones of another order of being, whose thoughts, materialized down here on the earth plane by the hosts of their subordinate servants, give to all the phenomena of earthly beauty that atmosphere of ecstatic awe which affects all who are in tune with it. So, in these higher realms, these thoughts of the shining ones are nearer to their source in the infinite, and hence evoke in the minds of the dwellers there the same ecstasy, but in far greater degree. And this is reflected in their minds by the corresponding earth images. And so the indescribable thought forms of the shining ones are given a local habitation and a name, are imaged and seen under the forms of earth. Not yet is the soul ready or capable of seeing these things in the terms of their own nature, for we must walk before we can run. It will be seen that we are not dealing only with the thoughts of discarnate man when we are dealing with the astral light. We are also concerned with the thoughts and feelings of man in the physical body, as well as those of the lords of light and the shining ones. So, this author, W.E. Butler, has also a book called Lords of Light. And I'm pretty sure this one is very available on Amazon. I would grab that book and read it also. I mean, hell, if you can find him, get all his books. But the Lords of Light, that's one of my favorites. It's a great one. Grab Lords of Light by W.E. Butler if you can, and read it. Each chapter is almost like its own little mini lecture. But yeah, he goes into these Lords of Light, these shining ones. The great formative and creative forces of the universe pour down through the astral light towards their materialization in dense physical matter. And it is in the lower astral that these divine forces are the most powerful. These forces, too, are working through our subconsciousness, and therefore those instincts and passions which are inclined to regard as low and earthly are in reality divine. It is only when they are out of balance that they become evil. Now keep that in mind when we talk about the clip-off and why people say the clip-off is evil. He says, it is only when they are out of balance that they become evil. The emotions and passions should be so governed by the self that they may be used temperately in the service of the God within. This attitude of the magician is poles asunder from that which would regard the divinely working instincts as evil and to be trodden underfoot. They provide the basic elemental force which can be directed into the true channels of creation, not only on physical, but on spiritual levels too. Now, the creations of the created, the great thought systems of the mind of men incarnate and disincarnate, are the appearances of astral light. But in itself, the basic astral ether is far different. It is not a realm of forms, except as these forms are built up out of its substance. And beyond and through the phantasmagoria of the astral light, the great tides of force in the astral ether ebb and flow. The ever-fluctuating billows and currents of the astral light engender, by sympathetic induction, defined states of mind and emotion in all who dwell in the sphere of earth. These induced emotions and thoughts are again imaged in the rolling tides of the light. And reinforce those images and currents which brought them into being. So action and reaction are set up and intensify their rhythmic swing until finally the accumulated and intensified power is discharged and materialized in earth conditions. So look, it's built up, it's built up, it's built up. And when it's ready, that's when we get material manifestation. He says, so action and reaction are set up and intensify their rhythmic swing until finally the accumulated and intensified power is discharged and materialized in earth conditions. Now that force has become a form again, right? From the lower realms of the astral light proceed those moral and psychic epidemics which astonish the world. And from its higher realms come those spiritual impulses which make for the regeneration of the race. For the astral light is dual. Like a glittering fiery serpent, the lower levels of the light wind their evil coils around the earth. They can inspire earth's wickedness. They contaminate its inhabitants. And gain in a vicious circle by the perverted power and energy which is poured out in response to their stimulus. This is the terrestrial dragon, earthly, sensual, and devilish, and within its realms are to be found the darkest abortions of the human and animal hybrid. MC Maestro says these earth conditions are created by the etheric patterns we set in place. Construct them well. Yes. So this astral light is dual, like a glittering fiery serpent. The lower levels of the light wind their evil coils around the earth. They inspire earth's wickedness. They contaminate its inhabitants and gain in a vicious circle by the perverted power and energy which is poured out in response to their stimulus. This is the terrestrial dragon, earthly, sensual, and devilish, and within its realms are to be found the darkest abortions of the human and animal mind. Here are the matrices of evolutionary time. Here are the discarded molds of early days, the dog-faced demons in the pit. Here too, acting as channels for the influences of the lords of unbalanced force, are the astral simulacra ideas of the gods of death and destruction, of lust and wanton evil. The tribal gods and fetishes of primitive tribes, and here also are the powers of darkness, in whose image ignorant man has made his gods. So the human race peoples its current in space, and its thoughts and emotions coalescing with the semi-intelligent forces of the lower astral assume a semi-independent life of their own. But there is also a celestial dragon, the upper astral, whose glittering radiance encircles the earth. From her flow harmony, peace, happiness, although far below the supreme nature, yet of her, also it may be said that her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. Within her realm are to be found the heroic images of the past. Here are those mighty ones of past epochs, their traditional forms still imprinted in the astral light. This is the archetypes, right? Or the gods. And to this reason, there ascend all images of the good, the beautiful, and the true. But forms are not native to the astral light, just as in our minds, the latent memories persist as tendencies, not definite images. Interesting. But forms are not native to the astral light. Just as in our minds, the latent memories persist as tendencies, not definite images, but may gather around them and build up appropriate images, so in the astral light, the forms perceived therein are due to the image-building power of the mind. But if the mind provides the images, the astral energies vivify and make potent those images, bringing them a stage nearer their materialization in the physical world. So the astral light in and through which the magician works must be thought of as an interpenetrating atmosphere of pure energy substance, fluid and plastic, reflecting like a mirror the forms impressed upon it. Hmm. Interesting. So the astral light in and through which the magician works must be thought of as an interpenetrating atmosphere of pure energy substance, fluidic and plastic, reflecting like a mirror the forms impressed upon it, either from mental and spiritual realms above it or from the physical realms below it. Such is the astral light. And in this light exists forces and powers which may lift us to the eternal stars or drag us down to abysmal slime. The invisible body. Chapter 6. Real quick break. Be right back. Chapter 6. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Good evening, good evening. If you haven't already, go ahead and pop that like button, especially if you like the content that's being presented here. It looks like we still have way more people viewing than we do have likes. So if you're not afraid of the demiurge and the archons like these other folks, make sure that you hit that like button, because that's the only way that they'll know. No face divination, peace. Alright, looks like we still got about 6 people that are afraid of the demiurge. Darnell Elliott, peace. You know, I was talking with somebody earlier at the show, and you know, this happens to be somebody that I knew from the past, and just catching up. Like I said, a lot of these people I haven't seen in like 19 years. And he'd gotten into magic. So it was pretty cool to actually have a conversation with somebody in person who, has done their own work, their own study and practice. And he said this, right? When we talked about magic, like this girl came up and she's like, I'll never work with black magic. I'll never work with voodoo again. It's scary. But I said again, well, what does that mean? And she basically said that she worked with a voodoo doll and had results, right? But, it was scary to the point that she didn't want to work with it anymore. So we got to talking about the definitions of black magic and white magic. And I wasn't really like trying to school individuals. I was just keeping the conversation going. And the guy mentioned about how, he talked about his definition of black magic and white magic. And what it boiled down to was about control. He said that black magic was when you try to control the universe, whereas he said, his words now, white magic was about submitting to the cosmic forces. That's what he said. So my question was, based on your definitions here, are you saying that control is inherently evil? The desire to control is inherently evil? And he said yes. And I said, well, at what point, at what level does control become evil? Because you control whether or not you go to work today. You control whether or not you're going to eat, etc., etc. Now, I didn't necessarily agree with his definitions, but I do remember thinking a similar way in the past. Because even if you do submit to the universe, there's some system of control at play. There's some system of control at play. As for myself, I think I want to know as much about that system as possible. Because everything, whether intelligent or not, is subject to those influences that stir the pot of existence. I'd rather be the spoon than the soup, if I can help it at all. Personally, I think this experience that we have here is about learning how to become that stirring spoon, how to transition from being chicken noodle soup to the spoon itself, and then eventually realizing that the spoon and the soup are the same thing. But he did have some pretty interesting experiences. He's somebody that has done a lot of internal navigation and research with using DMT and acid and mushrooms. And a lot of the stuff that he was saying does reflect a lot of these occult principles that we study about, and some of the things that I've discovered as well. So I figured it'd be kind of cool to maybe get him on a discussion, just to kind of share some of his perspective. And Amali says, LOL, you say that while I'm checking on the sauce in the pot. Goodness gracious. Dimensional Legend says, this is all about 15-dimensional time matrix of astral matter, sphere of mortality, and the Holy Spirit that's predicted to Colburn Bible. MC Maestro says, the cosmic forces can take you out just as much, but it shows the goal of religion being submission. The solo path deals with control. but both have an immanent synthesis. In the Taoist system, one can go with the flow of the cosmos or counter it, but they're not dealt with separately. Yeah, yeah. And everyone has their definitions right now. Regardless of how much we've learned from a book or how much practice we've done, everybody has their definitions. I challenge you to constantly reevaluate, to make sure that your definitions are cohesive to where you are today. Because, my understanding 10 years ago is not my understanding today. Sometimes we're carrying around definitions of the world that we defined when we were more ignorant than we are currently. So it's always a good idea to check your beliefs. Check your beliefs and make sure that they're still working in this ecosystem of your mind. Because many times, the beliefs that we have are borrowed from other people, which means that we don't have any personal evidence to back it up. So make sure that your beliefs, make sure that you've got personal evidence to back it up. That's my suggestion. Ultimately, you can do what you want. All right, let's keep it moving. We still got 9 people afraid of the demiurge and the archons. Hit that like button, and I promise you they will not eat you. Unless you like to be eaten. But you don't have to get a space vampire to do that. Let's get you a regular one. Chapter 6, the invisible body. When the average person begins to take an interest in magic, he is very often discouraged by what he feels to be the complexity of the magical systems. But this is simply because he is without any guiding principles, which, like Ariadne's thread, would lead him through the maze. When, however, these principles have been understood, then the whole magical complex becomes relatively simple. It is an essential law of the true magical tradition that the neophyte should start with the study of certain definite laws and principles which underlie the whole subject. I agree with that. When these have been mastered, the various details of magic fall into place, and the whole magical system can be viewed as a unity. For behind all the various systems, there is one philosophical thought form, based upon that particular philosophy known as Monism. Briefly, this philosophy teaches that all things, manifest or hidden, are parts of one stupendous whole, and that there can be nothing which is outside that whole. By him, the Logos, were all things made, yea, all things both in heaven and earth. With him as the indwelling life do all things exist, and in him as the transcendent glory do all things live and move and have their being. That's part of the Eucharist liturgy of the liberal Catholic Church. But to me, that sounds like some Kybalion, right? The Kybalion. Dimensional Legend says this is like the Ronin Warriors cartoon long time ago. I used to love that show. I remember when it was coming on TV. I usually didn't get a chance to catch it because I was just getting out of school. The power's in the armor. I remember it being so dark. Like the whole series was about the end of the world, Armageddon. That was like my first taste of it. Tremar, vocal harmony, peace. So, he was just talking about monism, and he was talking about when it comes to the average person taking their first interest in magic and seeing the complexity of the structure, and it looks like a big maze, right? And wouldn't it be nice to have a teacher who had that magical thread to kind of lead you through that maze without getting stuck or trapped in a dead end, right? And he said that that thread leading you through the maze would be equivalent to having the student or the noob start learning the fundamental principles behind all the rest of the magic. Because when you've been working with this stuff long enough, you start to see that there aren't really like separate things, that there's connections all across, whether we're talking about tarot, astrology, and your crystals or whatever. There's connections all across the board, all across the board. So why not start learning the connections first? Then when you want to specify, you'll see rather quickly that everything can be organized mentally. Premier Vocal Harmony says, what's the difference between control and will? Will isn't seen as evil at all. So that's the thing, like, whenever it comes to like these words like control, influence, socially, right, it's been installed that these words are negative and bad, and you shouldn't want to control anybody, you shouldn't want to influence anybody. But that's part of, hell, being under the influence and being controlled by forces that are not you. This morality, right? This social construct. Why is control bad? Wouldn't you want to be in control of your life? I try not to get hung up on the words control or will. What we want to get hung up on is what we're alluding to. What are we actually talking about? You're actually talking about being able to use your mind, your words, your emotions to steer life in the direction that you want it to go in. What's evil about that, right? The only reason I consider that's evil is if you're somebody who doesn't feel confident or comfortable being in the driver's seat of your life. And if that's the case, then yes, you'd want someone else to take the steering wheel. However, understand that with someone else at the steering wheel, you're subject to that individual and their desires and their will. Now, I don't know about you, but I know human nature. I know people. And just to keep it real, I don't really trust anybody else to be driving my ship. You know, people have good intentions. People are wonderful, nice, awesome, and great. But like I said, human nature, when it's roused, when it's awakened, it's going to do what it's going to do. Right? What did that guy say in that freestyle? Somebody back that thing out on you. You're going to do whatever you need to do. Right? We know human nature. So, I mean, what control, whatever word you want to use, like, don't worry about is it good or is it evil. Is it useful and is it appropriate? That's the question you want to ask. Not is it good or evil, because that's subjective. That's subjective, and it depends on somebody's culture. Ask yourself, is it useful and appropriate? Is it useful to do this? Is it appropriate? Is it useful to aspire to control the flow of your life? Is it appropriate to aspire to control the flow of your life? Nuru, peace. MC Maestro says a weak power matrix. Yep, that's that green book. Stuff Dog 69 says Jesus take the wheel. Right, and it's like I said, it's human nature. Sometimes it's way more comfortable to say Jesus take the wheel and just let Jesus handle it. It's comfortable to do that. And if that's where you are, that's okay. Like I said, many of us have been there. Many of us are still there. You can replace Jesus with whatever entity you're dealing with. Oh, Lucifer, take the wheel. Satan, take the wheel. King Payman, take the, whatever. The principle is the same. Society Eject says, I don't even trust people to drive my car, so damn sure not going to let people drive my life. Right, right. Like I said, nothing against anybody specific. Like I said, I understand how the mind works. I understand human nature. Things can change at the drop of a dime. Or things can stay exactly the same and you want to go in a different direction. Okay, so let's continue. We do not propose here to discuss the thorny problem of the existence of evil, etc., except insofar as it directly affects our subject. In any case, it is the faith of the magician that our three-dimensional brain consciousness is unable at the present time to apprehend the realities behind the veil of appearances. It is the faith of the magician that our three-dimensional brain consciousness is unable at the present time to apprehend the realities behind the veil of appearances. That form of mystical consciousness which develops from the magical work gives an illumination which enables the personal consciousness to rise above the pairs of opposites and to see the cosmic scheme from another point of view. Hugely important, massively important. Look, that form of mystical consciousness, right? So we got a mystical consciousness, right? That form of mystical consciousness which develops from the magical work, right? So look, there's a type of mystical consciousness that develops from magical work. And that type of mystical consciousness that develops from magical work gives an illumination, right? It gives an awakening. It gives an understanding, which enables the personal consciousness, your mind, to rise above the pairs of opposites, good versus evil, right? Hot versus cold, this versus that, me versus the demiurge, right? There's a certain level of illumination that causes you to rise above the pairs of opposites. That's why I keep talking shit about the demiurge stuff, right? Because you're in the same place as Black Lives Matter. You're in the same place as Democrats versus Republicans. You're in the same place as Jesus versus the devil. It's the same place. You just swapped out the words. You're still stuck in duality, right? But check this out. That form of mystical consciousness, which develops from the magical work, gives an illumination which enables the personal consciousness to rise above the pairs of opposites. And what happens after that? And to see the cosmic scheme from another point of view. At first, this higher perception will only show itself in very brief flashes. But as the magical training proceeds, these flashes of illumination increase in duration until finally it is possible for the trained magician to live entirely on the higher ranges of the spiritual nature. Since, however, the brain consciousness is under a heavy strain when this higher perception is active, we find that all the great occultists recommend a rhythmic approach and withdrawal in order to check spiritual lopsidedness or out of balance. You hear that? You hear that? Sometimes it's good to fall off so that when you get back on, you can realize just how far you've actually come. I love that. This concept of the unity of all life is a background against which all else must be judged. I'm flowing straight from the survival scrolls. The concept of the unity of all life, right? Not me versus the demiurge, the devil, whatever. Not these evil spirits or, any type of duality you're out here talking about, right? There's a certain level where you rise above those pairs of opposites. This concept of the unity of all life is a background against which all else must be judged, and it is therefore a cardinal, indeed a primary principle of the magical art. For fuller consideration of the monistic philosophy, the reader is referred to the works on the subject listed in the bibliography at the end of this book. Though this is the cardinal principle of magic, there is another which is very close second. This is the hermetic axiom said to have been engraved on the famous emerald tablet of Hermes, as above, so below. We must, however, be careful not to reverse it when we consider its application, since we, below, can have but an imperfect comprehension. An imperfect comprehension of the nature of anything, and therefore our mental concepts will of necessity fall far short of the reality. But above is the reality of which below is an expression, a true expression and correspondence under its own mode, but not the reality in itself. Although the below is necessarily imperfect, nevertheless it is one aspect of the whole of the above, and therefore any action in the phenomenal worlds, whether those worlds are physical or superphysical, which is a true correspondence with some aspect of the above, will tend to link up the levels of consciousness and draw through the cosmic energy or grace of God. It is stated in the Kabbalah that the physical plane, Malkuth on the Tree of Life, causes an influence to descend from Kether, the highest Sephirah, on the tree. In a magical rite, therefore, apart from the psychological effects it may produce subjectively within the mind of the magician, there's a drawing through of power, and this power may be used in many ways. Now, the closer the correspondence between any magical act and the realities above, the more effective such an act will be. The closer the correspondence between any magical act and the realities above, the more effective such an act will be. And for this reason, it is very necessary for the magical student so to construct his magical ritual that it may effectively draw through the maximum amount of power he is able to handle without risk. This must be accomplished. It is no part of the magical work to take unnecessary risks, either alone or in company. The next principle with which we must deal with is that of the egregore, or group consciousness. When two or three or many people gather together in one place to perform certain actions, to think along certain lines, and to experience emotional influences, there is built up, in connection with that group, what may be termed a composite group consciousness, wherein the emotional and mental forces of all the members of the group are temporarily united in what is known in occultism as a group thought form, or artificial elemental. Cosmic traveler, greetings. An artificial elemental. This group consciousness seems to have a much greater power than the simple sum of the objective minds and the group would suggest. This is because not only is it a group thought form built up by the conscious minds of those concerned, it is also formed through a linking up between what we may call the free-floating parts of the subconscious minds of all who helped to build it up, since those subconscious minds reach back, on the one hand, to the collective unconscious, and on the other hand, reach upwards into the realms of the superconscious. The group thought form is psychically linked with or contacted onto many aspects of thought and many forms of psychic mental energy. Thus, it is greater than any sum of its parts. When the group ceases to meet, this artificial elemental tends to become passive and quiescent. But when once more a group is founded, whether it be the original group or not, then the overshadowing group thought form makes contact with it and works through its members. Now, the use of any form of ritual and ceremonial tends to make a stereotyped form, which will, if the same ritual and ceremonial be used, as was used by its founders, manifests itself in the same way. Where such ritual and ceremonial work has been carried out for many years, or even centuries, the resultant artificial elemental is built up into a very powerful center of consciousness, and one which has had to build into it the powers, faculties, and ideals of all those who, through the years, have used those forms of words and actions. Not only those in the body, but the group working behind the egregore on the inner planes will also contribute to the building up of that form. For as the Yetziratic text has informed us, Malkuth causes an influence to flow from the Prince of Countenances, which is in Kether. In other words, we form a group on the physical plane, and simultaneously we draw into union with ourselves a smaller group on the inner planes. Upon each level of the inner planes is a similar group built until we come to the realms where the primal impulses which first began the work of creation are still to be found, vibrating their notes, which are the realities behind the phenomenal appearances on all the planes of life. Sunshine Chick says, Trav, you are so tired. I'm pushing through it. I need to re-up on this coffee, that's for sure. Well, we've got 2 more pages that we will go through. And then after that, I'm going to take my behind to sleep. Certainly haven't gotten too much sleep past couple of days preparing for this event. But it was well worth it, that's for sure. Thanks for noticing. All right, let's run it back real quick. When the group ceases to meet, this artificial elemental tends to become passive and quiescent. But when once more a group is founded, whether it is the original group or not, then the overshadowing group thought form makes contact with it and works through its members. Now, the use of any form of ritual and ceremonial tends to make a stereotyped form, which will, if the same ritual and ceremonial be used, as was used by its founders, manifest itself in the same way. Where such ritual and ceremonial work has been carried out for many years or even centuries, the resultant artificial elemental is built up into a very powerful center of consciousness, and one which has had built into it the powers, faculties, and ideals of all those who through the years have used those forms of words and actions. Not only those in the body, but the group working behind the egregore on the inner planes will also contribute to the building up of the form. For as the Yetziratic text has informed us, Malkuth causes an influence to flow from the Prince of Countenances, which is in Kether. In other words, we form a group on the physical plane, and simultaneously we draw into union with ourselves a similar group on the inner planes. Upon each level of the inner planes is a similar group built, until we come to the realms where the primal impulses which first began the work of creation are still to be found, vibrating their notes, which are the realities behind all phenomenal appearances on all the planes of life. When he says that, that makes me think about the Bij mantras. And remember how the Bij mantras, the seed mantras, the root mantras, these are what you find resonating at some of the higher levels of inner awareness. It also makes me think about these different deities. You know, like the question, they say that God is made in man's image, right? So I wonder if some of these, well, I know the answer is yes, but you know, a lot of these deities were created by groups of people that have been ritually evoked and established and have been used for thousands of years, to the point that now some of these egregores are more effective than something that we could come up with ourselves, right? You just think about the concept of Shiva, right? If you really look at what Shiva represents, nowhere is it said that he was a blue man sitting somewhere with a snake on his neck and a tiger skin cloth. Like, that's an egregore that we created. But the actual concept of what Shiva isn't a guy meditating. It's the highest state of unconditioned consciousness. But that egregore, MC Maestro says, been doing mantras hard this week. Yeah, it's kind of cool. You know, my cousin has his own independent study, and he's just now getting into the nakshatras and the planetary mantras. So of course, you know, I geeked out about what we were studying as a group here probably 2 years ago now, when we were really getting into the nakshatras. And I still got all those books about the nakshatras. And yeah, it's just interesting to see that he's like on his own solo journey, but like he keeps coming across the same subjects that we touched on as the Magus Society. So because he's been getting into the nakshatras, and he was getting into the planetary mantras, and I told him last night that even the nakshatras have their own mantras. I've been gradually getting back into that as well. Every day I used to say the mantra for the planet that rules the day, and then a mantra for the nakshatra that the moon is in. And here's the thing, here's why that's important. I think that doing those planetary mantras daily and doing the nakshatra mantras daily, what that does is it begins to tune your sensitivity, right? Because it's the reason why they designated all this stuff. These 28 lunar mansions, these 28 nakshatras, these are 28 different vibrations of pressure that the moon pushes down on the physical plane. And the same thing with the planets. Not necessarily where the planets are, but each day, each 7 day, has its own vibration that it exerts on reality. That's why we distinguish 7 days out of the week across the planet. So doing mantras for the specific day, right? Associating the colors with the specific day. The nakshatra mantra for where the moon is. This helps to tune you and allow you to become more sensitive to the subtle vibrations that are around you. Lawless Hydra says, please can you potentially do a read through of Real Magic? I don't know who that's by. I don't think I've heard of that one. MC Maestro says the planetary mantras attune you to the etheric cycles. Precisely. That's what makes these mantras so important, because they tune you. They help you become more sensitive. I'm telling you, man. That's why these mantras are so important. Clean. Danielle Elliott says, egregore is the manifestation of the high consciousness as a group. Yeah, but look at it the other way around. Essentially, when a group of people get together, a group of individuals focused on a singular objective, that starts to form a collective entity that we can call an egregore. But what you find most of the time is that when an egregore exists, it calls forth a group of people on the same page. So in a way, it works simultaneously. Kevros SS God says, where do I find the moon mantras? The book title doesn't... yeah, the book title doesn't really come to mind other than... what's that Vedic book? Vedic astrology. But honestly, you can go to YouTube and type in nakshatra mantras. There's mantras for each nakshatra all over YouTube. And I just made a playlist, found out where it was for the day, and just went with it. WT, peace, greetings. Decided Eject says, I did a Ganesha mantra for a week. For weekdays, it just let me tell you I walked out of court, smiling, paying nothing. Yeah, man. Won't he do it? Ganesh. All right, so let's keep going, and we will wrap up this particular chapter. Okay, so where such ritual and ceremonial work has been carried out for many years or even centuries, the resultant artificial elemental is built up into a very powerful center of consciousness, and one which has had built into it the powers, faculties, and ideals of all those who, through the years, have used those forms of words and actions. Not only are those in the body, but the group working behind the egregore on the inner planes will also contribute to the building up of the form. For as the Yetziratic text has informed us, Malkuth causes an influence to flow from the Prince of Countenances, which is Kether. In other words, we form a group on the physical plane, and simultaneously we draw into union with ourselves a similar group on the inner planes. Once each level of the inner planes, upon each level of the inner planes is a similar group built until we come to the realms where the primal impulses, which first began the work of creation, are still to be found, vibrating their notes, which are the realities behind all phenomenal appearances on all the planes of life. That sounds like the Beesh mantras to me. Now, according to the type of group will be the impulse under which it works. Such impulses are personified in the lords of the rays, archangels, etc. Yeah. Now, according to the type of group will be the impulse under which it works. This is that upon which the group thought form is built and by which it is maintained. Now, upon this primary structure, there have been formed what corresponds to the flesh and blood of the body, and this body is a thing of slow growth. When the great archaic rituals are used, the growth has been in progress for many, many centuries, in some cases for many thousands of years, and much has been built into them, which is not in true correspondence with the overshadowing impulse. Right? So if he's talking about thousands of years, he has got to be talking about either the Vedic information or the Kemet information. At the same time, it must be remembered that where such a psychic attribution is made over many years, it has become a true channel for the energy of the egregore, though a secondary one. An instance is the attribution of the lily to the Virgin Mary. This is a secondary attribution, whereas her blue robe is a primary one, linking up in the Christian egregore with primordial cosmic archetypal images. In the Christian religion, the church is regarded as the mystical body of Christ. And it must be remembered that the church, according to its own authorities, includes the church militant here on earth, the church expectant in the afterlife, and the church triumphant in the heavenly places. It also extends through all time, since, as St. Augustine put it, that which is now called Christianity has never at any time since the creation of the world ceased to exist. Only now it has been called Christianity. In its deepest aspects, the mystical body subsists in the timelessness of eternity, and for this reason, some of its teachers declare that its central ceremonial brings its members into a timeless contact and experience of that mystery which was expressed in earthly time and space through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Mystical body subsists in the timelessness of eternity, and for this reason, some of its teachers declare that its central ceremonial brings its members into a timeless contact and experience of that mystery which was expressed in earthly time and space through the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. We may thus define the egregore. It is the resultant in the inner world of the united concepts, emotions, and symbolic words and actions of the followers of the particular cult or faith throughout the whole of its journey. Just as we have an egregore for every religious faith, so do we have a magical egregore for what we may term the planetary tradition of the earth. But within this all-embracing group thought form, which, it must be remembered, exists as a living entity on the inner planes, there are differentiations. The first differentiation is into two main traditions, the Eastern and the Western. Though basically at one, the methods of these two traditions are adopted to the conditions of the races of the East and the West, respectively. On philosophic levels and in their higher degrees, the two traditions unite to form the planetary tradition. But in their lower aspects and in their methods of training, there is considerable divergence. Anna says the ghost in the machine, the spirit of the egregore. I say Captain Planet, the spirit of the egregore. There is no reason why the Western magician should not study the philosophy and principles evolved by his Eastern brother. But when it comes to the practical work, there is danger in what may be called magical mismating. All magical work should be done within the egregore of the appropriate tradition. Although we have stated that the relevant tradition should be followed, this does not mean that we must only use such traditional forms as have been handed down to us. Some such traditional forms have of late years been given out publicly, but a careful examination will show that quite a lot of the detailed work is, in point of fact, unnecessary. Here again we see that secondary attributions have often been mistaken for primary ones. However, since they have been so used, they will work in the right hands. But we may, if we will, construct our homemade rituals, basing them upon the primary principles, and by them we may succeed when the initiate of a genuine magical school, though using the traditional ritual and ceremonial, may fail ignominiously through his lack of realization of the principles involved. If our homemade ritual is built up on the lines of the true principles of the egregore of our tradition, then by a process of induction, if our homemade ritual is built up on the lines of the true principles of the egregore of our tradition, then by a process of induction, we may draw power from that tradition and become linked with it. Now, behind every magical school, behind the Eastern and the Western traditions, and again behind the planetary tradition, there are people, men and women of all grades of development. And these people, who are the stewards or guardians of their respective mysteries, are only too glad to work with and through any earnest student who is working along their line. It therefore happens that an individual group of magical workers is drawn into psychic and spiritual contact with the guardians of the mysteries. From thenceforward, it becomes a center through which they may work. Such a great privilege brings with it increasing responsibilities, but also increased opportunity for work in the service of the elder brother's humanity. Each country has its own group of watchers, and the normal magical evolution of any member of that country is within the sphere of that group. But to every man his own master. Some there are who are Easterns in Western bodies, of whom the late Annie Besant was one. But they are the exception rather than the rule. Oh boy. Society Eject says, MC Maestro, would you recommend the book Mantra Yoga and Primal Sound, Secrets of Seed by David Frawley? I would definitely recommend that book. That's my go-to mantra book, because not only does it list the planetary mantras clearly, it also lists all the other phrases that are within the typical mantras, like the Om, I'm, Clean, So, Shreem, Brazil, all the different mantras. It has each of the words used, and it gives like a synopsis and a breakdown of each of the words. So I would definitely recommend that book if you're looking to work with planetary mantras or with mantras in general. I think that's one of the better ones, honestly. All right, so that is the conclusion of tonight's reading. I have exerted a lot of energy today, so that's about as far as I'm able to go for right now. All right. So stay tuned. We got some wonderful things planned for you. We're keeping pretty consistent with this podcast, so Tuesday you can expect a new episode to be unleashed, and then we'll figure out how to get it on the main podcast sites. But Tuesdays, come back to my YouTube channel, check out the podcast. Thursdays, for the members, we're doing live streams that sometimes get streamed to YouTube. And of course, Saturday evenings, we continue with the book study here. All right. This has been a beautiful day. It far exceeded my expectations. Yeah. I wish that you guys could feel as wonderful as I feel and have felt. Because I tell you, anxiety was coming up. I didn't want to do it. I kind of just wanted to leave the past where it was. But in truth, what I was really saying to myself was, I don't think I can still do it. I don't think I can still sing and scream. I don't think I can still play the keyboard. I was having some self-doubt, right? But thankfully, I pushed through that. And once we actually met up and started practicing, like I keep saying, memory is state dependent, right? I even said that on the stage. And it's true. Once we all got together and started jamming, like the music just came back. It just came back like we never left. And we haven't played in 19 years, man. So it was pretty amazing to like experience that. And all the memories and all these feelings and emotions from 20 years ago just all flooded back. It was beautiful. It was beautiful, I swear. And on top of that, though, like, people that remembered us from back then still showed up. They still came. They drove down here to see us perform again. And they were telling me, like, the nostalgia. Like, I loved you guys back then. I love you. It's great to hear you now. I had my son in the front row, He didn't know what the hell was going on, but he was there. Like, I never thought I'd be able to perform my music and have my son in the audience. That was incredible. But, I mean, everybody hit their parts, man. Like I said, it was people singing along. That was pretty dope. Some people were kind of treating us like some OG legends because they were in diapers whenever we were playing. So it was like, yeah, I never thought I'd get to hear you guys live. I've always heard about your band, da 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 da. So, I mean, just everything was really cool. Everything was really cool. If you guys are interested, like I said, I'll get the show from my baby mama. She recorded it. I'll post it on my channel if you want to see it. But yeah, that's today, and I'm gonna go get some sleep. I hope you guys enjoyed this book read. This author is extremely wise, and I love how he condenses the information with the intent to teach a beginner, with the intent to teach an initiate, right? Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. So yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. Truly, truly. Like it inspires me, it fires me up, and it gives me motivation to see that there's people who take this stuff seriously and who are interested. You know what I'm saying? Like, look around the world, look at all these other people that you know. Nobody cares about this stuff, right? They don't care about this stuff. In fact, a lot of them are scared of it. So I appreciate you for like for having whatever it is that makes you get up and continue learning, studying, practicing, right? Oh boy. Oh yeah, man. And one of the bands that played a little bit after us, man, they had this. They brought the awesomeness, man. They brought the pit with the hardcore dancing, and hell, the testosterone was flowing in the room, and these dudes were about to kick each other's ass. It was real, slamming around and kicking and punching and jumping off the stage. It was cool, man. I haven't seen that shit in 20 years, 19 years. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it up. Once again, I appreciate y'all being here, and I will see y'all on the next live stream. All right. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you all. Peace.